Hello and welcome to The Analyst by Vajiram and Rupee, where we turn today's current affairs into clear, exam-ready insights for UPSC examination. It's April 27, 2026, and here's what we have today for the analysis section. We begin with extreme rainfall events, understanding their rising frequency, links with climate change, and implications for disaster management and urban planning. Next, we have a look at Mythos and cybersecurity, a fresh perspective into how next-generational security systems are moving beyond traditional threat detection. Finally, we will be wrapping up the session with focused prelims pointers for the May 24th prelims upcoming examination. So let's begin. Hello all, I welcome you back to Analyst. I hope all of you are doing well. I hope your preparation is going fine. Now without any further delay, let us start with the very first article of the day, which is focused on extreme rainfall events from an article in the Indian Express, which is talking upon the broad historical pattern of rainfall in the country and how it is actually very much related to climate change. And that is exactly what is the main focus of this article today, because actually the months of March to April, these are the months when the IMD, the India Meteorological Department, they comes up with their predictions for monsoon, because it is a weather department, and knowing the weather is very, very crucial, because most of the Indian agricultural fields, they depend on rain-fed agriculture, right? That means maybe the irrigation channels are not properly developed in those parts of the country, and that is why many farmers depend actually on monsoons. And in the recent discussions also, we have seen that recently the IMD predicted that India will be seeing only 92% of normal monsoon. That means using basic common sense, we can infer that we are going to get less rainfall this year. So less rainfall means maybe less incidence of floods, landslides and other extreme weather events. But that is not true actually, because even when we look at the Kedarnath tragedy, which actually took place in 2013, from then onwards we have seen every single year we are getting some adverse rainfall events. The reason, that is exactly what we are going to discuss today. Now before that, let us actually understand some very, very important terms, which here is given by the IMD in its rainfall classification system. So for example, if we are getting normal rainfall, IMD has told that, okay, if we are getting rainfall at 87 centimeter in one particular monsoon period, we are getting that as normal rainfall, right? Normal monsoon season. And if we are getting less than that, that means it is below normal or deficient. And if we are actually in this zone, maybe there can be drought conditions in the country, right? Also, the above normal situations are given here. For example, we can get more than 105 to 110% of monsoon season, right? And that all depends mainly on regional and global atmospheric and oceanic circulation. For example, if right now we are getting below normal IMD prediction of the monsoon season, it is mainly due to the El Nino event, which is going to strike the entire world this particular year. It is predicted. And also some people are telling it will be a mega El Nino event. That means we can expect more amount of droughts in the country. We can actually see that the crops and the overall agricultural sector, right, they can face some issues due to irrigation. So that is exactly why we have to understand that knowing this classification system is very important well beforehand, because right now then the farmers and every other stakeholder, they can actually plan and prepare. Now we are actually talking about the disaster related aspect and the climate change aspect as to how sometimes even when we are getting below normal rainfall, still the rainfall in that particular season can seem that it is way too much, because sometimes whenever these extreme rainfall events occur, they occur within a very small span of time, because we have various variations of rainfall events in the country. For example, whenever we see that the monsoon has onset in the country in the month of June, we see that across all parts of the country, we do not receive rainfall every day, or we do not see a set pattern of rainfall. We actually see variations. Variations can be intra-seasonal. For example, say in the month of June, one part of the country can receive immense amount of rainfall. Say maybe after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it can have a break for 1 week or 2 weeks. Then again the monsoon will be starting. So we have to understand that Whenever we are talking about monsoons, we are not actually understanding uniform rainfall event. We're actually seeing that rainfall is taking place in a lag format, right? Also, we see that there are various regions in the country which get more than above rainfall, such as Meghalaya, Mawsynram, or we also see Cherrapunji, which actually gets more than average rainfall. And when we compare the same with Rajasthan, we see that there are huge number of differences. So that is exactly why you have to understand that monsoon prediction is actually quite complicated. Now, when we look at the recent data, we see that from 2014, 13-14 onwards, every single year, it does not matter as to whether we are getting more than above predicted rainfall or less than predicted rainfall. Every single year, there have been major extreme rainfall events where there have been floods, landslides. If you see, look at the map here, every single year you will be seeing one major disaster in which we have actually lost around 17,500 lives as of 2021, right? So this is where you have to understand that even in the year 2024, there have been more than 181 extreme rainfall events. So that is what is very, very crucial to acknowledge that climate change is actually a reality, because climate change is actually trying to intensify the rainfall events. When we talk about intensification of rainfall events, we mean that, okay, on a normal day, on a normal monsoon day, there can be normal drizzle of rainfall, right? And normal drizzles can actually cause sometimes even floods, small floods in some cities, right? But when we talk about abnormal monsoonal rains, they actually result in intense bursts. This means that, say for example, imagine the city of Hyderabad. Hyderabad over the last few years and even one decade, it has been experiencing extreme rainfall events. It means that on one particular day, rainfall will be spiking way too much. And on that day and maybe 1-2 more days, that particular rainfall will be totally be stopping the city, because every major public infrastructure, they will be flooded. Now this is actually a situation where we get the term Clausius-Clapeyron relation. Very, very important for your means. This means that due to global warming, we have increasing concentration of water vapor in the atmosphere. And for your concern, guys, you have to understand water vapor is actually a greenhouse gas. You will be very surprised to understand this, but actually we have to understand every greenhouse gas has one common characteristic, that is what it is trapping the heat within it. That means water vapor is also trying to trap the heat within the atmosphere itself. And that is where we have to understand every 1 degree of warming in the entire world results in more than 7% increase in water vapor concentration in the atmosphere. So whenever the earth gets more warm, more water vapor gets concentrated in the atmosphere, and whenever we get more concentration of water vapor in the atmosphere, we get to understand that, okay, cloud formation will take place. And if due to more global warming, cloud formation takes place, and suddenly at one point of time extra moisture is released in form of precipitation, then definitely it is an intense burst. It is a sudden rainfall event, right? And also look at other regional conditions. For example, look at the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea in the recent times have been warming up. The sea level temperature and even the sub-sea level temperatures have been increasing. There also has been increasing amount of ocean acidification. Also, the glaciers are melting. The glaciers are melting, it is affecting the salinity of the waters. All of these are perfect recipe for major tropical storms and even cyclones. And due to which we have also seen in the recent times, the cyclones in these two seas have intensified. The next reason as to why climate change is intensifying this monsoonal pattern is our land use. Now, land use has been changing in the country for decades. We are right now building more buildings. We are converting the wetlands and actually having high-rise buildings on those places. So what is all these things leading to? This is leading to the loss of soil cover. Whenever we see that the soil cover is going down, the extra rainfall and the water from there will not be going anywhere but actually be flooding our urban spaces. And major flooding events actually take place due to this, because mainly the cities, if you can understand right now in India, are dense concrete jungles. We only see concrete everywhere. Soil cover, natural, say forests, small patches of forests are totally absent in major areas of the city. So that is where, in those places where we do not have enough green spaces, the flooding events actually are more intensified. Also, in the recent times, we have seen that Delhi actually received rainfall even in April month. This means that the western disturbances over the northern part of the country is actually also becoming more erratic in nature. It is becoming more unpredictable in nature, right? Now, this is not the condition only in India. We see this condition in the rest of the world too. In fact, India is actually a little bit better if you can compare to the global average. Now, according to the IPCC report, right, extreme rainfall events have actually increased globally, not only in India, but globally since 1950s, where the global surface temperature has increased by around 1.1 degree Celsius. And you know, with every 1 degree increase in Celsius, so if you find that more amount of water vapor is building up in the overall atmosphere of the entire world. So this means that above pre-industrial levels, we are seeing a worse condition right now. But when we look at India, this is at 2024 level. India has seen an increase of around 0.7 degrees Celsius, which is actually lower than the global average. So maybe actually when we talk about the historical responsibility of climate change, this fall with the Western countries, right? Because they were the ones who industrialized in the first place. They did all their pollution, they did all their industrialization activities, and later on we are actually left to deal with the mess that they have created. Because all of the cities here, they reflect the crisis that the new India is facing. They are facing intense rainfall events which are concentrated in a few days. So this means that these cities such as Bengaluru, Chennai, Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, they all witness rainfall only in a matter of few days. And there are also heavy rainfall. And this leads to what? It leads to intense urban flooding. So one of the main reasons behind them actually is human in nature, because we are increasingly filling up wetlands, the ponds, the lakes in the cities. They are actually, the numbers of them are going down because real estate projects are coming up, developmental projects are coming up, metro construction is happening, due to which the rainwater do not get any kind of opportunity to seep into the groundwater. This is one biggest actually issue behind groundwater depletion. Also, we find that the concretization of the cities, it is not leading the water to filter properly, the water to escape to the green spaces properly. Because the natural drainage channels, be it a small river nearby or be it any other small wetland nearby, they are totally being destroyed right now. Even for example, look at the very big cities. They have their proper drainage master plans. Even when I'm speaking right now in Delhi, we have a huge amount of implementation of the new drainage master plan in the particular city right now. But still, when we talk about the infrastructure, sometimes some cities have 20-30-year-old drainage systems which has been not yet retrofitted, which means it has not been modeled on the latest technologies, on the latest requirements. Also, when we talk about the concrete jungle that we live in the cities, we do not have enough green spaces, we do not have proper gardens in even our homes. So where will the water seep down into the groundwater? Where will the excess water due to excess amount of rainfall will go? Also, due to municipal issues, for example, most of the municipal corporations in the country, they are actually inefficient during urban flooding events. They actually take action after flooding has happened, not before. Because most of the work has to be done before. Because this unregulated development is happening. More of the buildings are coming up without even following proper building codes, right? Also, the master plans are actually outdated. They are not suited for climate change. The master plans are only taking into factor the overall requirement of the cities. They do not require any kind of cognizance to the climate change triggers. Because according to various experts in climate science, they tell that unprecedented rainfall events are actually attributed to climate change. Because we have just seen that every 1 degree rise is leading to 7% increase in water vapor concentration, which is also a greenhouse gas. So where we are actually taking this into consideration, we must be taking some steps as to stop the buildup of excess water vapor in the atmosphere. Also, we are seeing that right now the cities are actually seeing not prolonged rainfall. That is why you can understand that in the recent past, we actually have more number of breaks in the monsoon rather than continuous days of rainfall, right? On the top of it, we also have the urban heat island effect, because actually cities have become impervious spaces or concrete jungles. Water cannot go actually to the groundwater levels, and that is where we see that the heat is actually being trapped in the city itself, and especially during night we see that the overall temperature of the city, it goes up, and it actually intensifies more amount of local rainfall, right? Also, when we talk about the sea level rise, that is also one concern which is threatening the coastal cities. So these are all the events that we have seen. On the other hand, we also have other issues related to IMD, because their own prediction models sometimes even face public criticism. That IMD sometimes predict that, okay, monsoon will be hitting this month or next month, okay, some cyclone will be developing this way. Sometimes the IMD totally misses it, because the science of weather, that is meteorology, is very, very difficult, because even small impacts in some very less known areas can create some very big events, and it is not possible for IMD to look at every small events here and there. That is known as butterfly effect, which is how you can understand a small flutter of butterfly wings can create a tornado somewhere in Southeast Asia, right? This means that butterfly effects here and there, small events, are very difficult, because IMD can predict very heavy rainfall, but exactly how much rainfall, what quantity, it is very difficult to arrive at. Also, the more detailed the forecast is, right? For example, time and location, right? It is very, very difficult for IMD to deliver because of the uncertainty of weather events, the movement of clouds, the formation of precipitation, the buildup of moisture. These things are actually very, very complicated in real life. And that is how, the IMD can actually improve their weather apparatus. They can improve their supercomputers. They can deploy more satellites in collaboration with ISRO. And that is how we can get a bigger and better picture. And that is exactly why the government of India also recently launched the Mission Mausam. Now this mission will be implemented by 3 institutes, among which IMD is also one of the participants. It will be mainly focusing on improving our observations of the weather predictions by better investments in research and development. Also, when we look at various other government initiatives, government also have taken so many other initiatives such as flood management program. So whether it is actually a central scheme to protect the various embankments of the river from extreme weather events. Also, we have National Flood Risk Mitigation Project, where the World Bank has assisted the government of India. Also, we have the GLOF, the Glacial Lake Outburst Flooding Early Weather Warning System. So it was actually a very serious event in Sikkim 2023 and even in Chamoli in 2021, where we have actually seen that heavy loss of lives took place. And that is how after that we are having, proper systems to alert on an early basis. Also, we have the National Disaster Management Plan, which is based on the Sendai network actually. And this is where the Indian government is also aligned with internationally, because this is having 7 targets where we are actually focusing on disaster resilience, improved early warning system. Also, on the other hand, if you look at the Amrut 2.0, which is actually having the deadline year of 2026. Here we are trying to upgrade the cities. Particularly, we have also delineated funds for urban management. The overall Amrit scheme is at the cost of around 77,000 crores, which actually also has various initiatives to improve the overall climate resilience of the modern Indian cities. Next, we have the Common Alerting Protocol, which is actually having various multi-agencies such as IMD, NDMA and various state disaster management agencies which will be working in coordination. And at the end of the day, we also have the State Disaster Response Fund. On the international level, we see that we are actually signatory to the Paris Agreement, which is focusing on nationally determined contributions, where we are trying to achieve net zero by 2070. reduce the overall greenhouse gases intensity to our GDP. So this all can bring down the overall global warming, and this is very important because global warming has a direct relation with extreme rainfall events we have just seen. Also, in COP28 and COP29, in the comment section, you definitely must be letting know where these summits took place. In both of the summits, we have seen how the entire world tried to agree on a loss and damage fund. Now, in the comment section, you also let me know the loss and damage fund was criticized by which country. Now, in this particular fund, we will be giving money to those countries which is facing heavy disasters due to climate change. India will be very, very beneficial if we are trying to get funds from this. And at the end of the day, this is an India-led initiative known as the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, where we are trying to focus on infrastructure which can withstand the extreme weather events such as extreme rainfall. And this is where we need to understand what are the various steps that we need to take right now. Firstly, at the very first instance, we should be coming up with updated urban flood management plans in almost all of the million plus cities. These are the cities which more than million plus population, they need an upgraded plan wherein the climate change projections also must be factored in. Also, we need to again rejuvenate the urban water bodies and the wetlands because they are the natural kidneys of the ecosystem. They actually serve the purpose of improvement of the overall ecosystem of the urban areas. Also, we have to enforce the floodplain zoning laws very, very strictly because particularly in areas which have some rivers nearby. For example, look at the condition of river Yamuna during monsoon. So it leads to frequent flooding because the floodplains are not zoned regularly. They are not actually designated for some particular activities, and during monsoon they totally must be restricted also. So these all things must be implemented. Also, there must be a shift from relief centric to resilient centric approach. That means just the same thing that we have discussed before, that the municipal authorities, they take action when flooding has taken place. We should be taking actions before the same. For that, we need resilient infrastructure, also according to the Sendai framework. Also, the Amrut cities and the smart cities, they must be improved even more because mainly, basically, if you look at all the cities list, many of them are also smart cities. Many of them are actually having Amrut projects going on. Still, they are highly vulnerable to floods. So we have to do proper research. We have to gather data. We have to actually understand what are the issues still taking place. And at the end of the day, we have to monitor the situations in the upper mountains too. For example, the GLOF situation, mainly in the Himalayan states. And that is where a lot of money and funds also must be designated to IMD for research in hydrology research in how the global climatic pattern is changing the Indian monsoon. Because that is why we have to understand the government of India as a whole. We have tried to do a lot of good work and welfare activities to become drought resilience. Because there are so many government initiatives such as buffer stocks for drought management, but still we are facing issues with flood management. And that is where you can answer this question in the comments below to actually test your knowledge regarding how the climate change is altering the nature of extreme weather events in the country. Now we can move on to the next article. So Anthropic recently came up with the latest cybersecurity software. This is an AI-powered software which will be detecting cybersecurity threats, known as Mythos. Now you all remember Anthropic, right? They designed Claude, that AI application, which also came up with Opus 4.6. If you all remember, this was one of the main reasons due to which we also have extreme amount of layoffs, because AI is being integrated into the IT sector very rapidly. Now, we are not talking about layoffs and all of those things right now, because Mythos is not that software to replace any people with reference to legal task, accounting task, or whatsoever. Here, this Mythos is actually a very, very important software tool to improve the cyber security of not only some small companies, but very, very big companies, because Mythos has been given as some software to some very big companies such as Microsoft, Google. The exact company names we do not know, but it is said that Anthropic has formed an alliance with the major big tech companies, because Anthropic can then test out his Mythos cybersecurity tool with other companies, and other companies, they can get rid of the old and outdated and costly traditional cybersecurity models. But there has been a very, very big issue, because some unauthorized people have access to Mythos right now, and they can create some issues in cybersecurity in the entire global area, and that is exactly what we have to keep in mind regarding India's own internal security interests. Now, firstly, let us understand cybersecurity basics. Now, understanding Mythos and the issues here will be requiring an understanding of the software vulnerabilities. Now, imagine that you have an app on your smartphone. For example, on a day-to-day basis, you use YouTube, right? And often you see that on your Play Store, you get some updates on YouTube. Now, what do you think these updates are for? These are for some issues which were fixed by Google in the recent update, right? So these are actually known as software vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are actually some issues in coding. There can be some various other gaps in the logical reasoning behind the coding and everything. So some issues are already known to the software developers. These are known as known software vulnerabilities. Now, there are also some other issues such as legacy issues. These are various old and outdated codes that the software developers use, right, due to which there can be various issues. Now, there are also various other software vulnerabilities known as zero-day vulnerability. This means that the software developer, they do not know that, okay, these are the issues that are present in their software. And this is exactly what the hackers use to exploit these kind of issues, because the developers themselves do not know. And if the hackers get to know that, okay, there are some issues in this code of this app, then they can actually get into that app and they can steal all the data, credit card information and what's not, right? And this is exactly why we used firewalls and antivirus software traditionally. Not only we use that, even very big companies, they actually use various antivirus software. Now, antivirus software, they do what? They try to alert the various developers, okay, that there can be this issue and that issue. But actually, traditional cybersecurity model takes a lot of time and cost. Why? Because once the developers, they find out some issues in their software development, they try to test it. They try to send the testing to other third party, say some other company, to re-verify the test reports. Also, sometimes they also deploy some patches or software updates. Now, you know, software updates and coding for the updates, they take a lot of time. And also some costs and money are also involved. So traditional models are actually quite sophisticated. And that is exactly how the Mythos by Anthropic comes into picture. Now, it is simply an AI tool which has to be installed on the software development, say, platform or PC or laptop. So it can automatically, that AI tool automatically will be detecting all kind of vulnerability which humans cannot manually verify in that short period of time. So AI will be trying to observe, it will be trying to learn from the failures of the various vulnerabilities, and then it will be preparing a report, and that report will be given to the software developers that, okay, see that these are the many issues, vulnerabilities in your software. So this means that this is an AI ecosystem, and this will be replacing the antivirus softwares very, very soon, especially the softwares which are used by very, very big companies. Because recently, as a part of the project Glasswing, very important for your prelims, this is a project which Anthropic has invited on an urgent basis, right? On an urgent basis, the very big companies, the various major tech companies in the world, such as Microsoft, Google, the exact names are not yet out in the public domain, where Anthropic will be giving Mythos, to test out to these companies, and the companies can actually give back that data, that testing and all of those things back to Anthropic. So you can understand this is a kind of a cartel which has been formed, where only the very big tech companies have been invited to test out the software. This is the very first issue. Whenever we are trying to write the issues of this particular development, the very first issue is that most of the medium and the small firms has been excluded from trying out this new project, right? Now the second issue is that this is a cartel which has been formed. A cartel where there is one AI company and multiple AI companies are there, right? Now they will be dictating all the games and the rules. Also, there is, as of now, whatever we are hearing from the report, there is no pricing also which has been fixed, right? So they are operating on a very mysterious basis where it is totally resulting in an information asymmetry, where most of the information of the AI tool, the benefits, everything, opportunities, the big tech companies are getting and Anthropic is getting. The other companies, they are not getting anything. So what will happen to the other companies' cybersecurity aspirations? They will suffer. Yes, they are suffering right now, right? And also, there are other problems. Anthropic is telling the main reason as to why they have not released it in the public domain is that then other hackers and other non-state actors and other rogue states are those states, those nations which are very notorious in their cyber security, say hacking and all those activities. In the comment section, you can also let me some names of the countries which do that, right? So Anthropic do not want Mythos to land in the hands of those people. And that is why Anthropic is telling that as of now, we are going in this model. But you know what? That despite limiting the reach of this software, there have been various unauthorized users who has gained access to Mythos, right? And that is actually what has created this problem. Now this problem is that these unauthorized people, such as Russian hackers, Chinese hackers, Somalian hackers, they all will be getting access to this particular software and they can create even more potential cybersecurity weapons against people. Because we have to always understand that attackers always win, hackers always win, rather than defenders or these very big companies. Because defenders or proper companies, they take a long approach. They try to discover the threat or the virus or the various software issues. They test it, they patch it, they review it, they deploy it, they coordinate it. And in all this, the attackers exploit, right? Because, whenever the very big companies, they go out and find issues in their software, they find many issues. Sometimes they do not find even most of the issues that are actually 0-day vulnerabilities. The hackers, they need to what? They only need one vulnerability to succeed, right? They need only once to succeed. And that is how they can get inside the code. They can totally exploit it, right? And they have no accountability. The hackers, they have no accountability. They take very less time because they are dealing with only one issue, only one vulnerability with only one defect, and using that defect, they can enter. They also have very low cost, right? And also, they can use any tool. They do not have that particular legal requirement that, okay, you can only use approved and tested tools, right, with reference to cyber security. So that is exactly why you have to understand the psychology of attackers are way more serious. And Mythos is trying to add more negative issues to this, because if the exploitators, the attackers, they have access right now to Mythos, then God knows what they are going to do with it. Also, exploitation by the attackers actually take place more rapidly, right? The defenders, they do not get the time, the companies, they do not get the time to respond to those attacks. Now, apart from this, there are various other challenges also. For example, say, after knowing the source code of Mythos, right, now we are actually having various other cheaper alternatives. For example, ChatGPT's OpenAI 5.5 model is also slated to come with some of the security measures, right? So that means this monopoly that Anthropic had is declining. So their logic is not holding. Also, it can potentially trigger an arms race. For example, say countries like China and Russia, they love attacking other countries' critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure means nuclear power plant, airports, hospitals. So all of these are being attacked by these rogue nations, and also the nations themselves, they can spend more money to develop on these cheaper alternatives, right? Also, we have to decide globally who is controlling the AI security architecture, because according to recent reports, it has been also reported that US has used ChatGPT in attacks against Iran, right? Also, at the end of the day, these are the technologies which are known as dual-use technologies, such as nuclear technology. It has both civilian purpose and nuclear weapons purpose. Similarly, this Mythos is that particular tool dealing with cyber security, which is actually enmeshed with our day-to-day lives. So what is the way forward? Again, we have to understand that regulating this technology will be requiring nuclear technology level module. This is where we must be trying to regulate based on the strict use of nuclear technology, mainly for weapons use. So there must be a national law regulating the use of the same, and immediately that has to be come up. Also, we have to have more private-public partnership. For example, in India, we can have the CERT-In plus Indian AI startup collaboration to have more safe and ethical use of AI, wherein we can actually try to have indigenous cyber security technology so that we cannot actually depend on the other countries' technologies. Also, whenever we are talking about software development and software updates, we have to accelerate that update on a very fast level. Also, when we talk about the disclosure framework of various big tech companies, we have to regulate them and we have to mandate that they have to release various documents with reference to cyber security to the government. It can be confidential, but the documents can be disclosed for greater public interest. Also, we can have a Geneva Convention style particular document for cyber warfare, because it is becoming more prominent in the recent times, so that we actually get to know what are the do's and the don'ts and what are the ethical considerations of cyber warfare. India, on its other hand, must have a national critical infrastructure protection authority, because in the recent times, also in the comment section, you can let me know what are the major attacks that India has seen on its nuclear reactors, on its airports, on its ports, with reference to cyber attacks. And at the end of the day, we know that India faces skill shortage. We need more people skilled in AI and mainly in cyber security aspects, because recently, even in the recent discourse on social media, it has been recognized that cyber security and the skills needed in it are actually one of the top 20 future skills, wherein cybersecurity skills are recognized as that particular skill which will be having greater emphasis in the future, so that our schools and colleges, they can come up with proper certifications in cybersecurity. Now, at the end, we have this question again. You can try this. Let me know the answer in the comments below, and then move on to the prelims pointers. India and New Zealand are set to sign their free trade agreement. And for India, it is a very special FTA. Why? Because the trade team and the negotiation team consisted majorly of women. So making it the first FTA in the country to be women-led. Now let us talk it from the very basic level. For example, when we talk about free trade agreements, these are treaties between two or more countries with reference to elimination of barriers to trade. Barriers to trade can be of various types. Firstly, we can have various tariffs, we can have various quotas. Whenever we are talking about one country and how that country trades with the rest of the world, that is when the tariffs and the quotas and various other things come into picture. And if we have more tariffs and quota, they are not good for trade, right? They increase the overall cost of goods and services traded between the nations, and that is where we need good amount of economic integration. It means that two or more countries and their economic systems, they must come close, they must cut down the cost, they must try to get integrated with each other. And free trade agreements are one of the ways to do it, but not the first way. The first way is the preferential trade agreement, where the two countries can firstly explore what are the opportunities between the two countries. Then they can have the free trade agreement, where majorly we are talking about liberalization of trade in goods only. There can be some special FTAs that can also include services. But services and other investments are actually included in CEPA, which are actually one notch ahead FTA. Now, what is one notch ahead above CEPA? That is actually customs union, where there are actually various countries who form this union between themselves, where they have totally 100% internal free trade. between themselves, between their borders, and they can have one common custom against the entire world or some other countries, right? And finally, we have two things, that is common market and economic union. Right here, for example, in common market, apart from the various other free trade, we also have free movement of people and also money without any restrictions. And at the end of the day, the highest level of integration is economic union, where the countries sometimes they have the same currency, such as for example the Eurozone, right? So this is how we try to classify by economic integration, or how two countries come closer together. There are other ways also, for example, by number of participants. For example, if we have one country, that is known as unilateral, right? Or if we talk about two countries coming in together, that is known as bilateral, then multilateral and plurilateral. So this is where we get to know this kind of terms which are used in newspapers. Now, when we talk about the FTAs, FTAs are very special because these are exempted under most favored nation. You know, the most favored nation is actually a status that the WTO members have to give to all countries, because if India is trading with Bhutan and if India is trading with 50 other countries, then India cannot tell that I will treat Bhutan specially. I will have 10% tariff with Bhutan and I will be having 50% tariff with the rest of the world. Because if all of the members, all of the countries are members of the WTO, no one can discriminate between the other members. So that is why all members are most favored nation. In the comment section, can you let me know for India, which is one country which is actually not most favored nation status? Vice versa also, that is applicable. Also, when we talk about the WTO, WTO has told that, okay, if two countries or more than two countries are actually framing FTAs between themselves, they are exempted from this particular thing, because they are actually boosting trade between themselves. That is a good thing. They are getting integrated between themselves. And also, in FTA, it doesn't matter if it is your good or the foreign country's good, all must be getting equal treatment. That means all of the goods which is coming from the other partner country, they must be treated equally and fairly at all shops and malls and everywhere. Also, when we talk about one of the main key criticism that FTA faces in India, that is mainly the issue of inverted duty structure, because it has been seen that the taxes that we pay on raw material or the GST that we pay on raw material are actually quite lower than the final tax on that product, right? In the GST chapter also, you must have come across this term, that one of the main issues of GST even right now is the prevalence of inverted duty structure. In the comment section, can you let me know, in the GST 2.0, did the government take any initiatives to get rid of inverted duty structure or not? Also, when we talk about the FTAs, there are two kinds of lists. One is known as the positive list, where we do not have any kind of tariffs, or if we have tariffs, that will be very less, right? So these are the goods which are in the positive list for trade between the two nations whenever we are having FTA, right? Majority of the goods will be coming in, and there will be some goods which the countries will negotiate between themselves, and they will tell, okay, I will not be including this sector. I will be giving one example in the next slide only about this. Also, when we talk about the negative list, these are those goods and services which are actually not in the positive list. And that is where we are trying to protect those sectors within the trade apparatus. And also in the recent times, we have seen that Indian trade agreements have been including most of the countries from the western part. And also if we talk about New Zealand, these are also one of the western countries along with Australia, right? So this is where we are getting to sign more deals with them. For example, with UK we had one, with EU we had one. Also, when we talk about the FTAs recently, these are the FTAs which are actually moving beyond purely goods. These are also including some investment and various other things which normally FTAs do not include, right? So this is where let us have a look at the recent FTA between India and New Zealand. So firstly, let us look at what India is trying to gain. Firstly, India will be getting 100% free access to New Zealand markets to sell our own textile, apparel, leather goods, ceramics, etc. Right? So New Zealand will be supporting mainly our various efforts in the fruits business, in the research and development sections, also with reference to various other things such as food safety, capacity building, skills, research ecosystems, all those things will be taken care of. In fact, one of the most important FTAs in the recent time, I will tell, it is the India-New Zealand FTA. Why? Because in very few FTAs you will see that foreign direct investment is binding. That means India has told New Zealand that you have to invest on a legal basis, on a binding level, $20 billion in India over the next 15 years. This is a very, very big and major commitment that India has secured from New Zealand, and that is why it is so important. Next, when we talk about the various professionals and the students, they can work up to 20 hours per week while studying. Skilled professionals will be getting visas. Cultural professionals such as yoga instructors, Indian chefs, traditional medicine professionals, even Ayush professionals, they will be getting access into New Zealand. And that is where you see a lot of Indian immigrants can actually result due to this particular agreement. But a very important thing is that India protected the dairy sector, because New Zealand has been one of the world's most major dairy producers, and we also get cheap dairy products in New Zealand. And that is how, if cheap dairy products come into India, it can lead to losses of our dairy farmers, and that is why it has been added to the negative list, as we all have seen before. Also, agriculture and the various other sectors related to agriculture themselves, it has also been protected. Right? For example, onion, chana, certain oils and fats, they won't be included in this particular FTA. Now, when we look at the various other help and benefits that the traders and the exporters will be getting, it will be in the sectors of carpets, footwear, even the exports will be rising in the bags and belt, yarn and fabric, right? And it will be supporting the MSMEs, and it will be at the end of the day attracting FDI and building a lot of jobs and factories in the country. So actually this kind of FTAs that India is signing recently, they are trying to bring in more investments, more sets of, say, goods and services, mainly research and development, with reference to boosting India's own local sector, and also taking advantage of our labor-intensive sector. Also, when we talk about integration, we have seen that in the recent times, at various levels, starting from, say, PTA, for example, we have one with Mercosur, an FTA with various countries. In the recent times, we have also FTAs with UK, EU, right? CEPA we have with Japan, Singapore, right? So these are all the levels of integration that we are all trying to achieve, right? So this means that we are actually going in a very confident direction with people and various countries of the entire world. Also, when we talk about the rebalancing clause and the investment clause, this is where India is having a very major victory, because bringing investment brings jobs and factories. At the end of the day, this will be improving our India's GDP. And finally, we have to understand and appreciate the fact that the world is in conflict. We need greater economic integration with like-minded countries. So that is what is leading to the evolution of India's trade policy in the recent times. Now, let us move on to the next one. Yesterday on Sunday, the Social Justice Ministry actually had a Chintan Shivir, that is a brainstorming session on the status of the denotified tribes and their status of inclusion in the census of the country. Now, this has been an issue which has been going on in the previous discussions. Also, we have studied this, how this is a very, very serious issue, because we are talking about some sections of the population who were treated as criminals during the colonial time, because they were seen by the British administrators as born criminals, as addicted to committed crimes, as potential criminals, because generally they were wandering nomads. They were moving from one place to another. They were involved in various economic activities which were impediment to the British interest. And that is how the British actually thought about controlling those nomadic tribal population. They want to settle them somewhere, right? And they want to regulate them. But they had their own cultural practice. It is very, very normal to find these examples of communities spread in various parts of the country. They are belongings from some tribal populations. They are also nomadic in nature. They are also semi-nomadic in nature. That means they are also settled somewhere. In some states right now, they are getting some OBC status, some are not getting, right? Because the pattern that the colonial administration has set for them, the curse that they set on them, that is still prevalent in India right now. For example, the 1911 census was the first time they tried to enumerate them, right? And the last count that we have of the denotified tribe is from 1931 census. After that, we do not have a proper account of how many DNT are actually in the country right now. So this community count is not there. But whenever we talk about India's independence and liberal ideas, we try to repeal the act. We repeal the act by the disgraceful name of criminal tribes, right? And then we gave the name of denotified tribes. That means that we try to denotify the tribes from those criminal lists. They are not criminal in nature. They were nomadic in nature, that is their own cultural interest. And after that, we tried to classify them in OBC, SC or ST lists. But that has not been done as of now. And that is leading to the deprivation of various benefits that they are legally and constitutionally entitled to. Now, recently we know that the debate regarding census is on. Census is actually already has been started. Online enumeration has been started, and that is where you understand the denotified tribal community, they seek recognition in the census because according to them, there is no separate entry for them, right? Because if some of the states did not classify them as OBCs or some other SC or ST community, they will be treated as general people. But at the end of the day, look at their economic status, look at their social status. They are still lingering in the background, right? High amount of unemployment, high amount of suicides, high amount of landlessness prevail between those peoples. And that is exactly why they are demanding that separately you have to include us. And this is not their demand, rather. It was actually recommended by various committees, right? Because when we talk about the Iyengar Committee in 1949, right? Actually, before even official, effort, the committee recommended that we must be trying to give benefits to them. Also, when we talk about 2008 Rainfall Committee recommendation, it is the first national commission who recommended measures that, some welfare measures should be taken for the DNT communities. Also, the most important committee was the EDAT committee, which identified around 1,200 communities in India. And mostly they are from ST, SC and OBC lists. So some communities are not even included because they are not in any lists and they are unclassified and not getting any benefits of the government of India, right? So that is how you have to understand for example, in the state of UP, some are estimating that number can go to 7 crore people, and that is quite realistic. And that is why we need a proper task force to actually enumerate them in the census specifically. Because even Niti Aayog commissioned a survey under Anthropogenic Survey of India as to we have to classify them properly, but at the end of the day, this particular survey is not able to deliver the results and the study findings on time and with a proper accuracy. And that is how we have to come to the current failures, because most of the DNT communities, they're not able to utilize the government schemes properly. For example, there is a scheme known as Seed for Economic Empowerment of DNTs. And only if you are getting the status of SC, ST or OBC and classified as DNT, you get a certificate, then only you can get benefits under this scheme. What are the benefits? For example, education empowerment, health insurance, livelihood, skilling opportunities, and also housing, affordable housing under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So these things are not being delivered to those, for example, 7 crore people in UP, for example. Also, Census 2027 yet did not have any separate entry. So this is one demand. And also, in some states, the DNTs are actually having some, basic survival conditions. In some others, they are not having good conditions. They are totally backward. Because only 7 states and UTs combined, only they have actually issued DNT community certificates, which is actually one of their only ways of recognition as DNT and getting access to various government benefits. Now, that is why they are demanding a constitutional status. If not, let us actually have a commission on DNTs like the SC, like the ST and the OBC commission, which are actually constitutional in nature. They are also demanding to have a separate column entry in the census. But at the end, the government is telling that the DNTs are already served under the Ministry of Social Justice, under the Welfare Board. The government is telling that, okay, there are some other benefits. The DNT committees can take benefits under the same, but that is their core demand, and it has to be seen as to how the government will respond to their demands in this particular direction. Now we'll be moving on to the next article. So in this article, we are having a look into rupee depreciation and its impact on investment. Why this is in the news? Because of the Middle East conflict. We have seen how almost rupee has touched almost at the levels of 100 rupees per dollar, right? So this is how, let us understand from the very basics of what is rupee depreciation. Firstly, it means that when we compare rupee to another currency such as dollar, rupee has lost in comparison to that particular dollar, right? That means that there is a rise in exchange rate whenever we try to convert rupees into dollars. And this is very, very natural for a developing country like India, because mostly we are dependent on imports. And for imports, you know, we actually need a lot of dollars. So whenever we demand a lot of dollars, we actually increase the value of dollar, and dollar appreciates. And whenever dollar will be appreciating, always remember, rupee will be depreciating whenever we are trying to compare rupee and dollar only, right? So if India is importing a lot, we need more dollars, dollar will be appreciating, rupee will be depreciating. And that is where we actually understand that historically, Indian rupee has been depreciating on an average 2.5 to 3% every year over the past few decades, right? So this is quite normal. This amount of depreciation is quite normal. Even if you look at the historical trend, we have been actually depreciating only. The exchange rate has been increasing with reference to value, right? But when we talk about the recent crisis, rupee has been actually depreciating a lot, right? Now this is not related to our growing and developing economy, because that is attributable to 2.5 to 3% depreciation on a daily basis. But with reference to recent trade deficit and the current account deficit that we are facing due to the Middle East crisis, this is actually very, very, very important for us to consider. Now, when we talk about the recent impact of depreciation on investment, let us look at the same one by one. When we talk about equity investment, we are talking about, you know, the stocks, and also we are talking about the mutual funds. So if rupee is depreciating, what will be the impact on our stocks and mutual fund holdings? See, whenever we are buying mutual funds and stocks in India itself, for example, from National Stock Exchange, rupee depreciation won't be impacting too much, right? But whenever we are talking about equity investments abroad, right, and we are facing rupee depreciation a lot, that means that your investments, which are totally new, will be going down, because simply right now you need more rupees to buy more stocks abroad. So definitely, if you talk about investing abroad, your new investments will go down, right? Now, what about the old investments? Your old investments will be becoming more profitable. Why? Because since you have already invested in foreign stocks and foreign mutual funds, and say on the foreign side, it is appreciating, the stocks are giving you good return. And whenever you book it, you book in a dollar value and you will be getting in rupees values. So definitely if rupee is depreciating, you will be getting more rupees, right? So you will be getting more returns. This is when we talk about the equity instruments, but you have to keep in mind the domestic investments are actually not that much directly affected, right? Now, when we talk about imported inflation, this is very important. Now, from an investment perspective, you have to understand that if you are an investor, if there is inflation, there is a loss of your investment, right? In India, if we see that inflation is rising, so your actual real purchasing power of money goes down, right? And investments can also go down if inflation is way too high. But right now, when we talk about imported inflation, we mean that the crude oil prices, they are going up, right? And if crude oil prices are going up, crude oil is actually used as a raw material in various industries. So what will happen to the price of the raw materials? They will also increase. What about the price of the finished goods? They will also increase. So due to depreciation, what happened? Imported inflation, right? If there is imported inflation, overall what happens? If there is increase in inflation overall, RBI can do what? RBI can increase the repo rates, right? And if repo rates rise, investments fall, because people will not be taking loans then, right? People will be saving money in their bank account, right? So business will go down and various other things will be going down, right? So this is how we understand that depreciation can lead to imported inflation, and if that imported inflation keeps on rising over a period of time, RBI can increase the interest rate, which can lead to decrease in investments going further down, right? So this means actually the bonds will be becoming more expensive for the government to give, because in areas or in times of higher interest rate by the RBI, the government, if it wants to come up with new bonds, right, it has to offer higher interest rate. So that is why the cost of actually government bond, they will go up. Now next is gold. So historically it has been seen whenever rupee has depreciated, gold prices, they have risen over a period of time, right? And this is where you have to keep in mind that whenever we are buying gold, actually we are buying gold with dollars, right? And whenever we are actually spending more money, Indian money, to buy gold, we have to convert rupees to dollars. And again, we are demanding more dollars. So that means dollar will be appreciating and rupee will be depreciating, right? And in the middle, the gold prices will rise. Now, whenever we are talking about investing abroad, we have seen in the very first thing that in equity investment, in stocks, in mutual funds, if you are already invested abroad, you will be actually be profiting, because your investment was in dollars, right? And whenever you book your investments, you get the profit, you will be getting profit in dollars itself, right? And by that time, if rupee is depreciating, you will be getting more worth in rupees, right? And at the end of the day, when we talk about depreciation, now depreciation of any country's currency, if it is happening on a very substantial level, such as 8%, 10% depreciation every year, it means that that country is not performing well. But you have to keep in mind that this must be a scenario which has to happen for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years going on. But India historically has only seen depreciation of 3%, which is quite normal for a developing country. But if India will be seeing this level of depreciation, investor sentiment will be going down. Investors will realize that in India we are only seeing depreciation, right? All of the investments and everything will be going down. So this is exactly what we have to keep in mind with reference to the overall impacts of depreciation and investments. Now you have two questions. Two questions you have from PYQs. You have to solve these questions. Pause the screen. First is this one. Second is this one from 2019. So let me know what is the answer in the comments below with reference to these two questions. And especially, if you have all these kind of depreciations right now, what is the strategy to adopt? Firstly, we have to reduce the expenditures. On a personal level, the people must be reducing the expenditures on mainly imported commodities, so that we do not have further rupee depreciation. Then, if you want to have better returns and better profit as an investor, that person is advised to invest abroad in various equity and various other mutual funds and even in gold, because gold also gives higher returns during depreciation period. And at the end of the day, this article is also talking about the ways in which Indians can invest abroad. Firstly, there are so many mutual funds in the country itself, which invest in US stocks, in EU stocks and various other stocks. Also, you can directly create stock market account or demat account with other stock brokers which are based internationally, right? Also, you can invest via the gift city under the liberalized remittance scheme, where you cannot invest unlimited amount. You can only invest up to one particular amount, which you can let me know in the comments below, because it has also been covered in the previous analyst sessions, Now on to the next one. The National Commission for Scheduled Castes have actually taken suo motu cognizance of a major political leader's speech. Now let us understand from the perspective of the exam as to what we actually mean by National Commission for Scheduled Caste. Firstly, when we talk about the National Commission for Scheduled Caste, it was actually not there in the original constitution. Now, in 1950s, Article 338 was there, which actually provide for a single special officer designated for the welfare of the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes populations. In 1990, we bought the 65th Constitutional Amendment because according to various constitutional articles, right, which provided, caste-based discrimination restrictions, also educational betterment, various other aspects regarding education and jobs, abolition of untouchability. So, also based on the current state of crimes against scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, so there was a need for a separate constitutional body. So a multi-member commission was set up for both SC and STs combined, which was split in 2003 by the 89th Constitutional Amendment Act. So under this, Article 338 is right now for the National Commission for Scheduled Castes, and Article 338 was inserted totally newly for the Scheduled Tribes Commission. And finally in 2018, the 102nd Amendment Act was brought in, under which Article 338B has been created, which is right now operating as the National Commission for Backward Classes. Now, when we talk about the Scheduled Caste Commission, it has exactly 5 members, very important facts for prelims, wherein there must be 1 chairperson and 1 vice chairperson along with 3 other additional members. Mainly, when we talk about the appointment, it has to be done by the President of India by a warrant under his hand and seal. In the comment section, can anyone let me know what is the prime difference between other ordinary appointments by the President and the appointments which are done by warrant under his hand and seal? Let me know who actually has read polity to the maximum level. Also, when we talk about their tenure, they will be usually have 3 years tenure, but it is not exactly fixed and it is actually determined by the President. And most importantly, they have the powers of a civil court. They can summon, they can actually take suo motu action, right, with reference to the enforcement of attendance of a particular citizen who has infringed the rights of the scheduled castes. Also, they can call for discovery or production of any evidence that they want. They can also call for evidence of various affidavits. Also, they can take out any record in the public with reference to any scheduled caste atrocities or any other aspects. Also, they are legally required with reference to any state or any central government decision on the scheduled castes, right? But we have to understand that mainly they can actually look into various complaints, they have to present reports to the President, they can investigate the various issues, but their powers are actually advisory in nature, right? Also, they can actually regulate its own procedures, they can actually have various investigation wings in various other states. Also, they can have collaboration with their own state commissions too. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that there are issues with reference to the National Commission for Scheduled Castes. Sometimes the main political critics, they tell that it is a toothless tiger because mainly it is contingent on the central government functions. Now, we are actually completing this topic on to the final topic. China has come up with Atlas drone swarm system, and this article is telling that it is a source of worry for us. Now let us look at what is it all about. Firstly, it is actually manufactured by China's own state-owned company, that is government's own company, known as China Electronic Technology Group Corporation, wherein there are actually 4 things to be kept in mind. Firstly, there is one truck, if you can see here, which is kind of a launcher. For what? For all these kind of drones, which are not 1 in number, but thousands in numbers. In actually quite a few hours, they can deploy thousands of drones. Most prominently, you have to keep this in mind that in 300 seconds, they can launch 96 drones. And the special features about these drones, they have their own cognitive ability. That means they are AI powered. They can actually identify various targets, right? There will be a drone pilot, one operator who will be controlling many drones at once, and they can actually strike with reference to their own targets, and they can actually also learn from their own patterns, right? So they can also be used in various remote locations. They're very easy to hide, they're small, and actually they are quite advanced, so advanced 96 drones in 300 seconds. So they can actually totally block the anti-missile systems of some country. And you know, China is not alone. US also has in their Perdix and offset particular missions. Also, China has another mission there with reference to drones, that is Tian, and Israel has the same with reference to Legatus. They are all actually swarm drone techniques. So they will go to one particular location, swarm the missile defense systems, and totally render it useless. Now the main security implication, not only for India, for the entire world, is that firstly, the Himalayan security architecture has to be increased right now by India, because it is launching so many drones at one particular time, almost like the bees, if you can see, who move in one swarm in the sky. So they can totally overwhelm the defense systems. They can totally attack simultaneously and totally cripple the defense system, right? So that is where we need more funds to actually dismantle this China strategy, where they are actually going and using drones to swarm the weapons of the enemies, and this is actually a very intelligent system that they are doing. They are also having this autonomous kill chain systems. They can totally deliver the target of destroying the enemy, say, infrastructure, power plants, and even some top officials, right? Also, China can easily export this abroad. Over a period of time, they can export it to various other countries, such as Pakistan also. And even there are fears that China can use this in Taiwan. Now, in the comment section, can you tell me that in the recent times, in the past 1 week, what China did majorly in Taiwan that has made the entire world so concerned, especially after the Middle East crisis? Now, what India has as countermeasures? Firstly, we have the DRDO D4 system, Drone Detect, Deter and Destroy, wherein we are using this system to have two things. Firstly, soft kill. For example, if there are incoming drones, we can jam the circuit boards by electronic warfare. We can also actually mock their GPS systems and make them go here and there. Also, we can use directed energy weapons. These are laser systems which can totally destabilize the drones. We also have the Project Zorawar, which is actually a light tank, right? If you can understand this, this is also an drone countermeasure. And finally, we have this IDEX Meher Baba Swarm Challenge, right? If you can see, the Indian Air Force have this swarm drone competition from time to time. This is actually to boost the readiness of Indian forces. So finally, we have come to the end of the discussion. I thank you all for being a very patient audience. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up. Till we meet again, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.